The underestimated species. The dismissal Captain Alana Vasquez stood at the observation deck of the orbital station, watching the alien delegation's ships disappear into hyperspace. Their sleek vessels moved with an elegance that made Earth's bulky. Construction shuttles looked like flying scrap metal. The meeting had lasted exactly 17 minutes. 17 minutes for the Stellar Confederation to crush humanity's hopes of joining the galactic community. Primitive scavengers, Elena muttered, repeating the words that still burned in her memory. The Confederation's ambassador, a tall crystalline being called Zephon, had used those exact words when describing humanity's technological capabilities. No quantum computing, no dimensional fold drives, no neural link communication systems. According to their standards, humans were barely above Stone Age level. Elena's reflection stared back at her from the reinforced viewport. At 38, she had spent half her life working toward this moment. The chief military engineer of Earth's Defense Coalition, she had overseen the construction of every orbital platform, every defensive satellite, every desperate attempt to make humanity appear worthy of galactic attention. None of it had mattered, Doctor. Marcus Chun approached from behind, his footsteps echoing in the empty corridor. The head of Earth's Advanced Weapons Research Division looked as defeated as Elena felt. His usually neat hair was disheveled, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. The Confederation rejected our application, Marcus said quietly. It wasn't a question. Elena nodded without turning around. They didn't even pretend to consider it. Zephon called our fusion reactors quaint and our missile systems adorably outdated. Apparently, we lacked the sophistication to contribute meaningfully to interstellar civilization. Marcus joined her at the viewport, staring out at the star-filled darkness. What about the trade agreements? The technology exchanges we proposed? Denied across the board. Elena's voice carried a bitter edge. They're willing to establish limited commerce, but only for raw materials. They want our minerals, our rare earth elements, our biological samples. In return, they'll sell us basic medical supplies and food. Synthesizers. We're not partners, Marcus. We're a resource extraction site. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken fears. Earth had spent decades preparing for first contact, building up their defenses, organizing their governments, dreaming of the day they would take their place among the stars. Instead, they had been relegated to the role of cosmic peasants, useful only for what could be mined from their planet. The hegemony threat, 3 weeks after the Confederation's rejection, the real crisis began. Elena was reviewing defensive protocols. In her office, when the emergency alert flashed across every screen in the command center. The Hegemony Alliance, a militant faction that controlled 12 star systems, had positioned a battle fleet at the edge of the solar system. General Harrison Webb burst into Elena's office without knocking, his weathered face grim with concern. Elena, we've got a situation. The hegemony is demanding exclusive mining rights to our asteroid belt. They're giving us 72 hours to comply. Elena's blood ran cold. The Hegemony Alliance was known throughout the galaxy for their ruthless expansion tactics. Unlike the Confederation, they didn't bother with diplomatic pretenses. They took what they wanted through force, and their technology was centuries ahead of anything Earth possessed. How many ships? Elena asked, already pulling up the long-range sensor data. 47 confirmed, Webb replied. Destroyers, cruisers, and at least 3 dreadnoughts. Each one of those dreadnoughts could glass our entire planet. Elena stared at the tactical display, her mind racing through impossible calculations. Earth's entire defense fleet consisted of 19 ships, all based on conventional fusion drives and projectile weapons. Against hegemony plasma cannons and energy shields, they would last approximately 14 minutes in direct combat. What about the Confederation? Elena asked. Surely they won't allow this kind of aggression in their territory. Webb shook his head grimly. I contacted Ambassador Zeffin directly. He expressed mild concern about the situation, but stated that the Confederation cannot interfere in disputes between non-member species. We are on our own. The cruel irony was not lost on Elena. The same aliens who had dismissed humanity as too primitive to join their organization were now abandoning them to be conquered by an even more aggressive species. Earth's independence hung by a thread, and that thread was about to be cut. Project Thunderstrike that night. Elena found herself in the deepest levels of the Lunar Research Facility, standing before a project that officially didn't exist. Project Thunderstrike had been humanity's most closely guarded secret for the past 5 years. A theoretical weapon system that pushed the boundaries of human engineering to their absolute limits. Dr. Sarah Kim, the project's lead physicist, looked exhausted but determined as she explained the weapon's capabilities. The quantum railgun uses Earth's magnetic field as a massive acceleration chamber, she said, pointing to the holographic display showing the weapon's firing mechanism. We channel quantum-locked particles through a magnetically contained barrel that extends from Luna's surface to the edge of Earth's magnetosphere. Elena studied the complex diagrams, trying to understand the science behind humanity's last desperate gambit. What kind of projectile are we talking about? Dense tungsten rods, each one weighing approximately 50 kilograms, Sarah replied. But the real power comes from the velocity. We can accelerate these projectiles to nearly 15% of light speed. At that velocity, the kinetic energy released on impact is equivalent to a small nuclear explosion, but with zero radiation and perfect precision. The implications were staggering. If the quantum railgun worked as designed, it could potentially destroy any ship in the solar system with a single shot. The problem was that it had never been tested on a live target, and there was no guarantee it would function properly under combat conditions. Marcus Chun, who had been silently reviewing the technical specifications, looked up with concern etched on his face. The power requirements are enormous, he said. We'd need to drain every fusion reactor on Luna just to charge the system for one shot. And the magnetic stress on Earth's field could cause atmospheric disruption. Elena nodded grimly. The quantum railgun was a weapon of absolute desperation, the kind of thing you built when conventional options had been exhausted. Using it would announce to the entire galaxy that humanity possessed technology capable of threatening ships light years away. The political consequences would be unpredictable and potentially catastrophic. The ultimatum, the hegemony's final message, arrived exactly 72 hours after their initial demand. Elena watched the transmission in the main command center, surrounded by the military leadership of Earth's defense forces. The alien who appeared on the screen was massive, easily 3 meters tall, with chitinous armor-like skin and 4 arms ending in razor-sharp claws. I am War Commander Thaxis of the Hegemony 5th Fleet. The creature announced in perfect English, its voice a deep rumble that seemed to vibrate through the speakers. Your species has failed to comply with our lawful claim to the mineral resources of this system. You have 6 hours to evacuate all personnel from your asteroid mining operations and transfer administrative control to hegemony forces. Failure to comply will result in the pacification of your orbital installations and the establishment of direct military governance over your planet. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Elena looked around the room at the faces of Earth's military leadership. These were experienced officers who had fought in conflicts across the globe, but none of them had ever faced an enemy with the technological superiority of the Hegemony Alliance. General Webb was the first to speak. Our conventional forces can't stop them. We might take out a few of their smaller ships, but those dreadnoughts are practically invulnerable to anything we have. Elena took a deep breath, knowing that her next words would change the course of human history. What about Thunderstrike? The room erupted in nervous murmurs. Everyone knew about the quantum railgun project, but few believed it was actually functional. Dr. Kim had insisted that the weapon was ready for deployment, but there was a vast difference between laboratory testing and combat application. The risks are enormous, Marcus warned. If we fire that weapon and it fails, we'll have revealed our most advanced technology for nothing. If it succeeds, we'll have announced to the entire galaxy that Earth possesses strategic-level weaponry. Either way, there's no going back. Elena studied the tactical display showing the hegemony fleet's positions. The alien ships were arranged in a classic siege formation, designed to maximize their firepower while minimizing their vulnerability to counterattack. It was the formation of a predator that had never encountered serious resistance. They think we're helpless, Elena said quietly. They think they can dictate terms to us, like we're some primitive tribe. Maybe it's time to show them exactly how wrong they are. The decision, the final hours before the hegemony ultimatum expired, were spent in frantic preparation. Elena had made the decision to authorize Project Thunderstrike, but the technical challenges of firing the weapon were immense. The quantum Railgun had to be calibrated for each target individually, taking into account gravitational fields, magnetic interference, and the target's predicted movement patterns. Dr. Kim worked alongside a team of Earth's best physicists, running calculations. That would determine the trajectory of humanity's first shot at the galactic establishment. The target was clear: the hegemony flagship, a massive dreadnought called the Stellar Dominator that served as War Commander Thaxis's command vessel. We'll have approximately 43 seconds from the moment we fire until impact, Sarah explained to the gathered command staff. The projectile will be invisible to most scanning systems, but the energy signature from our firing mechanism will be detectable across half the solar system. Every ship in the hegemony fleet will know we fired something, but they won't know what or where it's aimed. Elena nodded, understanding the strategic implications. If the shot missed or failed to penetrate the dreadnought's shields, the hegemony would respond with overwhelming force. Earth would have perhaps minutes before. Their orbital installations were reduced to debris. As the final minutes ticked away, Elena stood in the lunar facility's firing control room, her hand hovering over the authorization key that would activate humanity's most dangerous weapon. Through the reinforced windows, she could see Earth, hanging in space like a blue jewel, beautiful and fragile and completely defenseless against the alien fleet waiting to claim it. The communication console crackled to life with War Commander Thaxis's voice. Your time has expired, humans. Prepare for pacification. Elena inserted her authorization key and turned it. Across the moon's surface, massive electromagnetic coils began to charge, drawing power from every fusion reactor in the lunar colonies. The quantum railgun was awakening, and with it, humanity's desperate bid for survival. Fire, Elena commanded. The lunar surface erupted in a brilliant flash of electromagnetic energy as the quantum railgun discharged its tungsten projectile into the void. There was no sound in the vacuum of space, but Elena could feel the weapon's power through the vibrations. In the facility's structure, somewhere in the darkness between worlds, a 50-kilogram rod of tungsten was racing toward its target at nearly 45,000 kilometers per second. For 43 seconds, the fate of humanity hung in the balance, and the sensors detected the impact signature, and everything changed. The Stellar Dominator simply ceased to exist. One moment it was a 3-kilometer-long symbol of hegemony power, bristling with weapons and protected by energy shields that could deflect nuclear explosions. The next moment, there was only an expanding cloud of superheated plasma where the flagship had been. Elena watched the destruction through the facility's telescopes, barely able to believe what she was seeing. The tungsten projectile had struck the dreadnought with such incredible force that it had converted the entire ship into energy. There was no debris, no survivors, No trace that the stellar dominator had ever existed. On the communication channels, panic spread through the hegemony fleet. Ship commanders who had been preparing for an easy conquest suddenly found themselves facing an enemy capable of destroying their most powerful vessels with weapons they couldn't even detect until it was too late. Elena activated the fleet-wide broadcast system, knowing that her next words would be heard not just by the hegemony forces, but by every alien civilization monitoring the solar system. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the Earth Defense Coalition," she announced, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what had just occurred. "You came to our system believing we were helpless. You are wrong. You have 30 minutes to withdraw. Your fleet beyond the orbit of Pluto. Any ship that remains in our system after that deadline will share the fate of your flagship." The response was immediate. Within minutes, the hegemony fleet was retreating at maximum velocity, their ships disappearing into hyperspace as fast as their drives could carry them. The siege of Earth was over, but Elena knew that the real consequences were just beginning. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy, not as a species seeking acceptance, but as one capable of projecting devastating force across interstellar distances. The quantum railgun had shattered more than just the stellar dominator. It had shattered the existing balance of power that had kept Earth marginalized and ignored. Elena stared out at the stars, knowing that everything had changed. Humanity would never again be dismissed as primitive scavengers. But whether their new reputation would bring them respect or make them targets remained to be seen. That the balance shifts, the galaxy reacts. Days after the destruction of the stellar dominator, Elena Vasquez found herself at the center of a political storm that spanned across multiple star systems. The quantum railgun's devastating demonstration had sent shockwaves through every major galactic civilization, and the reactions were as varied as they were intense. Elena stood in the newly established war room deep beneath the Cheyenne Mountain complex, surrounded by holographic displays showing real-time intelligence from across the galaxy. Ambassador Zephan's face appeared on the largest screen, his crystalline features somehow managing to convey both shock and calculating interest. "Captain Vasquez," Zephan began, his melodic voice carrying undertones Elena had never heard before. "The Stellar Confederation wishes to express its surprise at recent developments in your system. We had no knowledge that humanity possessed such advanced weaponry." Elena kept her expression neutral, though internally she felt a grim satisfaction at the ambassador's change in tone. 3 weeks ago, this same being had dismissed her species as technologically primitive. Now he was speaking to her with the careful respect reserved for potential threats. "The Earth Defense Coalition has always prioritized the protection of our homeworld," Elena replied diplomatically. "Recent events simply required us to demonstrate our commitment to that principle." Behind the ambassador, Elena could see other Confederation representatives huddled in urgent discussion. The quantum railgun had forced them to reconsider everything they thought they knew about human capabilities. More importantly, it had revealed the existence of a weapon system that could theoretically threaten any ship in the galaxy, regardless of distance or defensive capabilities. Dr. Marcus Chon appeared at Elena's shoulder, holding a data tablet filled with intercepted alien communications. "Elena, we're picking up massive fleet movements throughout Confederation space," he whispered. "It looks like they're repositioning their forces to establish what they're calling protective patrols around human colonies." Elena nodded grimly. The Confederation's sudden interest in protecting humanity was transparently self-serving. They weren't concerned about human welfare. They were worried about the strategic implications of Earth's new weapon. If the quantum railgun could destroy a hegemony dreadnought, it could certainly threaten Confederation vessels as well. Internal strife, as Elena dealt with the galactic political crisis, Earth itself was experiencing its own upheaval. The successful defense against the hegemony had been celebrated initially, But the implications of possessing such a devastating weapon were now dividing human society. Dr. Rebecca Foster, Earth's Secretary General, had called an emergency session of the Global Council. Elena found herself standing before representatives from every major nation, facing questions that had no easy answers. Asterisk, Captain Vasquez, began the representative from the European Federation, her voice tight with concern. The quantum railgun represents an unprecedented escalation of military capability. What safeguards exist to prevent this weapon from being used inappropriately? Elena had anticipated this question, but that didn't make it any easier to answer. The quantum railgun requires authorization from both the Defense Coalition and the full Global Council to fire. No single individual can activate the weapon. But you fired it without Global Council approval, accused the representative from the African Union. You made a unilateral decision that could have triggered an interstellar war. Elena felt her patience beginning to fray. I made a decision that saved our planet from conquest. The hegemony gave us 6 hours to surrender our sovereignty. There wasn't time for committee meetings and lengthy debates. Secretary General Foster raised her hand for silence. The question before us now is not whether Captain Vasquez acted correctly. The survival of our species validates that decision. The question is how we proceed from here. Asterisk. The debate that followed revealed deep divisions within human leadership. Some representatives argued for dismantling the quantum railgun, claiming that its existence made Earth a target for preemptive strikes. Others insisted that the weapon should be mass-produced, arguing that only overwhelming force could guarantee human independence. Asterisk, asterisk. Elena listened to the arguments with growing frustration. These politicians had spent their careers managing terrestrial conflicts, but they were utterly unprepared for the realities of galactic politics. They thought in terms of treaties and negotiations, failing to understand that respect in the interstellar community was earned through strength, not diplomacy. Assassination attempts. Elena's security concerns proved justified when the first assassination attempt occurred less than a week after the Global Council meeting. She was reviewing defensive preparations in her private office when the lights suddenly went out, replaced by the red glow of emergency lighting. Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison, her head of security, burst through the door with his sidearm drawn. Elena, we've got infiltrators in the facility. Some kind of cloaking technology. Our sensors can't track them. Elena immediately thought of the hegemony's retreat. The aliens had withdrawn their fleet, but that didn't mean they had given up on revenge. A surgical strike against the quantum railgun's key personnel would be far more subtle than another direct confrontation. The attack came from an impossible direction. Elena's office was on the 15th sublevel of the mountain complex, surrounded by solid rock and multiple layers of security. But her assailants seemed to phase through the walls themselves, materializing from the solid stone like ghosts. Were 3 of them, humanoid but clearly alien, wearing form-fitting suits that bent light around their bodies. Elena caught only glimpses as they moved, their forms distorting like heat mirages. One of them carried a weapon that crackled with contained energy. Morrison opened fire immediately, his bullets passing harmlessly through the lead attacker. They're not solid, he shouted, diving to cover Elena with his body. Elena's mind raced as she tried to understand the technology being used against them. The attackers were clearly using some form of dimensional phasing, existing partially outside normal spacetime. It was technology far beyond anything Earth possessed, but it had limitations. They couldn't interact with solid matter while phased. Quantum resonance, Elena shouted to Morrison. They have to phase back to solid form to attack. As if responding to her words, the lead attacker solidified just long enough to fire his energy weapon. Morrison screamed as the alien beam caught him in the shoulder, the smell of burned flesh filling the air. But his sacrifice gave Elena the opening she needed. Elena grabbed the experimental plasma cutter from her desk, tool designed for precision work on spacecraft hulls. As the alien phased back to solidity for another shot, she triggered the cutter at maximum power. The superheated plasma beam caught the attacker's center mass, and his scream was unlike anything Elena had ever heard. The other two attackers immediately retreated, phasing back through the walls and disappearing as suddenly as they had arrived. Elena knelt beside Morrison, applying pressure to his wounded shoulder while calling for medical assistance. Who were they? Morrison gasped through gritted teeth. Elena helped him sit up against the wall, her mind already working through the implications. I don't think they were hegemony. The technology was different, more advanced. We're dealing with someone new. Unlikely alliances, the assassination attempt marked a turning point in Earth's galactic relationships. Within days of the attack, Elena received an unexpected communication from Captain Thane Corax of the Outer Rim Coalition, a loose alliance of smaller species that had managed to maintain their independence from both the Confederation and the hegemony. Corax was a reptilian being from the planet Saurus Prime, standing nearly 2 meters tall, with scales that shifted color based on his emotional state. His people had been fighting a defensive war against hegemony expansion for decades, using guerrilla tactics and superior knowledge of their local space to avoid conquest. Captain Vasquez, Corax began, his translated voice carrying a note of genuine respect. Your demonstration against the hegemony has created opportunities that did not exist before. My government wishes to propose a mutual defense alliance. Elena studied the alien commander through the holographic display. Unlike the Confederation's crystalline sophistication or the hegemony's brutal militarism, Corax projected a sense of pragmatic determination that she found refreshing. What kind of alliance are you proposing? Elena asked. The Outer Rim Coalition controls 17 star systems along the galactic periphery, Corax explained. We have resources, strategic positions, and detailed intelligence on both major galactic powers. What we lack is a deterrent capable of making them think twice about direct confrontation. Elena immediately understood the implications. The quantum railguns demonstrated effectiveness had made Earth valuable as an ally, but Earth needed partners who understood the harsh realities of interstellar politics. The Outer Rim Coalition represented exactly that kind of pragmatic partnership. Asterisk. Governments would need to negotiate the specific terms, Elena said carefully, but Earth is certainly interested in developing relationships with like-minded species. Over the following weeks, Elena found herself working closely with military commanders from a dozen different species. The Thrakari were masters of defensive engineering, capable of building fortifications that could withstand direct bombardment. From hegemony dreadnoughts, the Melody possessed advanced scanning technology that could detect cloaked ships and phased infiltrators. The Corvins specialized in rapid strike tactics, using small, fast ships to harass larger fleets. Each species brought unique capabilities to the Alliance, but they all shared one crucial characteristic. They understood that survival in the galaxy required strength, not just good intentions. The Peace Faction, not everyone on Earth supported the military alliance with the Outer Rim Coalition. Dr. Amanda Phillips, a prominent xenobiologist and peace activist, had organized a growing movement, opposing what she called Earth's militaristic response to galactic contact. Elena found herself facing Dr. Phillips in a televised debate that was broadcast across Earth and several allied worlds. Phillips was articulate and passionate, arguing that humanity's future lay in cooperation and cultural exchange rather than military deterrence. Captain Vasquez represents the old thinking, Phillips argued, her voice carrying the conviction of someone who truly believed in her cause. She sees the galaxy as a battlefield where only the strongest survive. But we have an opportunity to pioneer a new approach to show that intelligent, Species can resolve their differences through dialogue and mutual understanding. Alana respected Philip's idealism, but she also understood how dangerous it could be in the current political climate. "Dr. Phillips, I admire your optimism," Elena replied, "but the galaxy has already shown us what happens to species that rely solely on goodwill. The hegemony didn't invade our system because of a misunderstanding. They invaded because they believed we were too weak to resist." The debate continued for nearly 2 hours, with both women presenting compelling arguments for their respective positions. Phillips argued that the quantum railgun's existence was escalating galactic tensions and making Earth a target for preemptive strikes. Elena countered that the weapon was the only thing preventing Earth from being conquered by any of several hostile civilizations. The public reaction was deeply divided. Polls showed that roughly 40% of Earth's population supported Philip's peace initiative, while 35% backed Elena's military approach. The remaining 25% remained undecided, waiting to see which philosophy would prove more effective in practice. The final test, the ultimate test of Earth's new galactic position, came when the Confederation itself faced a crisis. A previously unknown species called the Devourers had emerged from the galactic core, destroying everything in their path with technology that seemed to defy known physics. Ambassador Zephin's emergency communication reached Elena in the early hours of the morning, his usually composed demeanor replaced by barely controlled panic. "Captain Vasquez, the Confederation requires immediate assistance. The Devourer fleet has broken through our outer defenses and is advancing toward our core worlds. We are prepared to offer Earth full membership in the Confederation in exchange for the use of your quantum railgun technology." Elena stared at the holographic display showing the Devourer fleet's advance. The alien ships were unlike anything she had ever seen, massive, organic-looking vessels that seemed to consume the wreckage of their victims, growing larger and more powerful with each victory. "What makes you think the quantum railgun will be effective against them?" Elena asked. Zephon, single quotes as crystalline features flickered with desperate hope. "Their ships appear to be partially organic. Kinetic weapons have shown more effectiveness than energy-based attacks. Your railgun might be capable of penetrating their adaptive defenses." Elena considered the request carefully. The Confederation's offer of membership represented everything humanity had originally wanted: full recognition as a galactic civilization, access to advanced technology, protection under interstellar law. But it also came at a moment when the Confederation was desperate, which meant the terms might be more favorable than they would normally offer. "I'll need to consult with my government," Elena said, "but I'm willing to consider joint operations against this new threat." The decision to assist the Confederation was not made lightly. Elena spent days in conference with world leaders, military advisors, and representatives from the Outer Rim Coalition. The consensus that emerged was pragmatic, helping the Confederation would demonstrate Earth's value as an ally while also protecting humanity from a threat that could eventually reach human space. The Devourer War, the battle against the Devourer fleet, became Elena's greatest test as a military strategist. The quantum railgun was effective against individual ships, but the Devourers had learned from previous encounters and were adapting their tactics. Elena coordinated the defense from the bridge of the newly constructed orbital command station, working alongside Confederation admirals and Outer Rim commanders in humanity's first truly joint military operation. The quantum railgun had been reconfigured for rapid targeting, allowing multiple shots against different targets within the same engagement. The decisive battle took place in the Proxima Centauri system, where a combined fleet of over 200 ships faced off against 37 Devourer vessels. Elena watched through tactical displays as the engagement unfolded, coordinating railgun strikes with conventional fleet movements. Target the lead ship, Elena commanded as the quantum railgun completed its charging cycle. Fire. The tungsten projectile streaked across space at near light speed, striking the massive Devourer vessel amidships. But instead of disintegrating, like the hegemony dreadnought, the alien ship absorbed the kinetic energy and continued advancing, its hull glowing with absorbed power. "They're adapting to kinetic strikes," reported Dr. Kim from the weapons control station. "The impact energy is being distributed throughout their ship's structure." Elena's mind raced as she processed this new information. The Devourers weren't just technologically advanced, they were learning from each attack, developing countermeasures in real time. Conventional tactics wouldn't work against an enemy that evolved during battle. "Can we overload their adaptation systems?" Elena asked. "Hit them with more energy than they can absorb?" Dr. Kim ran rapid calculations on her console. "Theoretically, yes. But we'd need to coordinate multiple railgun strikes simultaneously. The power requirements would drain our entire lunar grid." Elena looked at the tactical display, watching as Devourer ships tore through the combined fleet's formations. Ships were disappearing into the alien vessel's maws, consumed by technology that treated matter and energy as interchangeable resources. "Do it," Elena ordered. "All railgun stations, prepare for simultaneous firing. Target the largest Devourer vessel." The coordinated strike required precise timing from railgun installations on Luna, Mars, and 3 orbital platforms. Elena watched the countdown timer, knowing that this attack would either break the Devourer advance or leave Earth defenseless for the next several hours, while the weapons recharged. Fire. 5 tungsten projectiles, each traveling at 15% of light speed, struck the massive Devourer ship within microseconds of each other. The combined kinetic energy exceeded the vessel's ability to absorb and redistribute the impact. The alien ship didn't explode, it imploded, collapsing in on itself as its matter-energy conversion systems failed catastrophically. The destruction of their largest vessel seemed to trigger a retreat response in the remaining Devourer ships. Within minutes, the alien fleet was withdrawing toward the galactic core, leaving behind a battlefield littered with the wreckage of dozens of ships from multiple species. Elena slumped in her command chair, exhausted by the intensity of the engagement. Around her, officers from half a dozen different species worked together to coordinate rescue operations and assess the damage. It was a sight that would have been impossible just months earlier, humans working as equals alongside aliens who had once dismissed them as primitive. Ambassador Zifan appeared on the main communication screen, his crystalline features showing. Something Elena had never seen before. Genuine respect. "Captain Vasquez," he said formally, "the Stellar Confederation hereby extends full membership to the human species, with all rights and privileges accorded to founding members. Your people have proven themselves to be not just technologically capable, but worthy allies in the defense of galactic civilization." Elena nodded acknowledgement, but her mind was already turning to the future challenges that lay ahead. Earth had earned its place among the stars, but that place came with responsibilities and dangers that humanity was only beginning to understand. The quantum railgun had shattered more than just enemy ships. It had shattered the barriers that had kept humanity isolated and powerless. But as Elena looked out at the stars, she knew that their greatest adventures and greatest challenges still lay ahead. The galaxy was vast, filled with wonders and terrors beyond human imagination. And now, finally, humanity was ready to face both as equals among the stars.